supported peaceful negotiated settlements to disputes since it joined the UN as a Soviet Ukraine in 1945. I also want to state that between 1999 and 2001, my country served as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, and this saw the resolution of conflict in Moldova and Georgia. I also want to clearly state that my country has made substantial contribution to the UN peacekeeping missions across the world since 1992. However, going back to the Syrian situation, we know very well that the situation began with the demonstrations in mid-March 2011 for reforms, then quickly degenerated into voices insisting on overthrowing President Bashar Assad. The only unfortunate thing, and I still can see it in this session, is that members are becoming partisan. And that's very unfortunate. We were supposed to remain neutral and approach the issue with a lot of soberness. On behalf of my government, probably I have this biased touch because my country has maintained special active contact with Syria right from the days of the USSR to present times. For instance, Syria was among the first Arab countries to recognize Ukraine as being independent on 28th December 1991. And that one remains dear to the people of Ukraine. A friend in need is a friend indeed. But that said and done, my point is we must take a neutral position and partisan position. And what I'll call for in this session is that we should front a political dialogue that will see to it that political dialogue with Syria with regard to the need of the general Middle East peace settlement based on relevant UN resolutions. I rest my case.
To make two observations. That the member representative of Syria is becoming a bit rowdy, and the member will be thrown out in case he proceeds. Then two, that we are dwelling so much on what has happened, but we are not looking ahead. We are not making recommendations. We as the international community, we know that there are various ways that we can use to resolve the issues. We know all of them. No one member, very few members have come up with some suggestions, but they haven't come out strongly. Because at the end of the day, the reason why we came here is to find a solution to the Syrian crisis. The chair has had very little in that regard. The next member is USA.
We, the people of America, have been very consistent with our position on Syria. Our president, Barack Obama, has been categorical about his position on Syria and has even called upon Mr. Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria, to lead serious reforms in his country so that he can lead a democratic transition in this country to get out of the way for the people of Syria to elect new leaders who can steer their country through a peaceful transition and restoration of law and order. My government feels that the legitimacy of the current Syrian regime has run out, and has also noted that Assad has no plans to back down at all. The American people are now calling upon the rest of the international community that is represented here to begin isolating Syria immediately. We are also backtracking from our initial view that saw the president of Syria as a reformer and even led us to appoint an ambassador to Damascus in the year 2005. We do not feel that Assad is able to bring any reforms to the people of Syria. Now the US has come here to consolidate international coalition to put pressure on Syria as a first step to a long process to weaken the Assad regime. We need to deal with Syria through isolation and economic sanctions. As we have observed and as we have heard from other delegates represented, the amount of human rights abuses seen in Syria today has become of great concern to all of us. And we would like to call upon China and Russia to reconsider their support to Syria in the midst of this crisis. There are thousands of refugees moving into Turkey, and from the recent figures obtained from the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the numbers are overwhelming. And this is a clear indication that there's a problem in Syria. The Turkish government, I stand to be corrected, I believe they are represented somewhere here, are losing patience with the current situation. We have also noted that the Syrian army is using excessive force against its own citizens, a situation which is completely unacceptable. Turkey is overburdened, and we, the international community, should not sit back and watch. The American people are calling upon this Special General Assembly to reach a resolution now to deal with the Syrian regime so that we save the people of Syria who are looking up to us right now. We need not to get emotional. We need to remain sober and to give relief to the Syrians, for they are waiting for us to act.
The Eritrean government, Mr. President, respects the sovereignty of independent states and calls on the UN to give equal treatment to all its members and give Syria a chance to redeem their faith in the international society. Eritrea therefore calls for member countries, as Russia and China have said, to exercise restraint and let the government of Syria with its people solve their problems. Mr. President, Eritrea feels betrayed by the UN. We have been accused before the Security Council by the governments of Ethiopia and Kenya of supporting terrorism groups in the region. And as you have rightfully stated, Mr. Chairman, Kenya continues to oppress the MRC groups in the coastal region, and Ethiopian government continues to brutalize its people by evicting them from their ancestral land to construct dams and sugar plantations. Mr. President, Eritrea calls on the UN Human Rights Commission to investigate these claims, since Ethiopia is our neighbor, and it's a security risk to our existence as a country. Chairman, Eritrea also calls on the Security Council to lift the sanctions imposed on Eritrea on these falsehood claims.
But now we are left with about four slots. One of them will go to Syria to defend itself, its position. The other will go to Syrian opposition to defend its stand. And then 2 more members. And Kenya has a right to defend itself against the accusation from the representative from Eritrea, Kenya.
We believe this is the only forum where we can be heard, and we call upon the chair to intervene in these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam from Eritrea, for your very, very constructive points. First, I would like to address the several issues that have come up regarding Kenya, starting with a very deep appreciation for the chairman's comments and concern for the for Kenyans. We'd like to thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for showing your concern to do with how the Kenyan government is handling the MRC, and we assure you, as I had stated before, that Kenya is deeply committed to human rights and democracy, and in that regard, we always listen to all groups that seek to secede or go against the wishes of the majority. So we would like to assure this house that we are indeed addressing the issue of the MRC. In terms of, I would also like to comment on the statement made by the representative from Russia. I would like to urge the Russian representative not to use the veto power as a weapon or as a way of protecting their own allies. And I would also like to remind him, as well as the Chinese representative, that indeed in both their countries, revolution at one point or another had a very major impact as to how democracy came. I can remember the Maoist revolution in China and the revolution that brought down the Tsars. So please do not forget where you've come from. I'd also like to urge the governments of Ukraine and Pakistan in their comments that indeed there are sides to be taken, and we have taken them, and fence sitting will not save the people of Syria. As regards the small matter of Eritrea, I would like to urge the government of Eritrea not to be opportunistic and bring up issues that and should bring up issues that they may have through the application that has been lodged through the Security Council. That, however, does not remove the fact that the Kenyan government does have evidence that Eritrea was involved in the arming of the Al-Shabaab militia in Somalia. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now, the slots that are remaining are 4, as the chair has already stated. The first slot goes to the United Kingdom.
United Kingdom would like to express with deep concern the atrocities that have happened and escalating violence in Syria. It is unfortunate that we have to wait for the figures to escalate. Are we waiting for them to be 50,000, 100,000 for us to know that there's a crisis in Syria? The time to act is now. So we are calling upon this General Assembly to move with expediency and move very fast so that we can bring a change and bring peace to Syria. So the United Kingdom urges members to take Syria issue to heart, and the United Kingdom would also like to call upon the parties to the crisis to cease the use of weapons. And this is with a request that we are putting across to be with immediate effect, because without peace, we cannot talk about economic growth, we cannot talk about social reforms, we cannot talk about any kind of reforms. The war and the violence has to come to a stop before development of Syria can take place. The UK expresses the need for this session to be a tool that brings the people of Syria the much needed peace and stability that they seek to see. It is our wish, the United Kingdom, to see the people of Syria get that peace and stability they so deserve, and that is accorded to them. We therefore have to ensure that all we in the General Assembly during this special session can do so and act with expediency so that the peace and stability that Syria needs may prevail. So it's up to us, I believe. We should not wait for the numbers to get to 50,000 or 100,000, but the time to act is now. Thank you.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. We, the people of Nigeria, do not think that investigating human rights violation in Syria is an infringement of sovereignty in Syria. There are some actions that we would recommend that would help to solve the crisis in Syria. One, Syria should fully comply with the 6-point plan proposed by the UN Arab League Joint Special Envoy as an initial roadmap for resolving the crisis. On 25th March 2012, the Syrian government committed to a 6-point plan proposed by the United Nations and the League of Arab States Joint Special Envoy Kofi Annan, which was endorsed by the Security Council Resolution number 2042 of the year 2012, and it was adopted in its 67th 51st meeting on 14th April 2012. Number two, the Security Council endorsed the plan and set up the UN supervision mission in Syria as a key element was established by the Security Council Resolution 2043 of 21st April 2012. Number three, it calls for provision of immediate steps by the Syrian government and the cessation of armed violence in all its forms by all parties to protect civilians and stabilize the country. Number four, the Syrian government immediately needs to cease troop movements and end the use of heavy weapons in population centers and begin pullback of military concentrations in and around population centers. Number five, there is need to create necessary conditions to allow the transitional institutions to fully carry out their responsibilities while respecting fundamental freedoms. And six, the United Nations initiative should involve assisting Syria in restoring authority to secure governance institutions and regain its unity and territorial integrity, as well as fight against established terrorist and criminal networks. Thank you.
The floor is for the Syrian opposition. 5 minutes.
Now, Mr. Chair, no one poses a threat to this regime more than itself. As such, it has not only become dangerous to the Syrian people, but to itself, and it ought to go. Mr. Chair, we call all voting UN member states, to act with the interest of the Syrian people at heart and vote to have armed UN peacekeepers back in Syria and hold individuals in the Assad government to account the human rights violations that have been committed. Threats by some member states to veto a UN Security Council resolution are not only disheartening, but lacks in humanity. We urge them to vote for armed peacekeepers and ask Assad to step down forthwith to allow Syrians to elect a democratic government. As we said earlier, we call on this assembly to advise the Security Council on the urgent need to intervene quickly and pass a resolution under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter to arm the UN monitors so that they can return and also ensure that the regime stops killing while enforcing the UN Arab League envoy and Kofi Annan's peace plan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
First of all, I would like to remark that the Americans and the British are not better. The Americans went to Iraq, they have killed people. They went to Afghanistan, they have killed people. And there's no peace in those places. Hamas was elected by the people, by democracy. The Americans refused. They're not better. The British, I was there, our president was there. They are not better. And we don't want to be their puppets. We want reforms. We will not remove our army from the streets because we are protecting our people. Those who should be away are the opposition. They're the ones sending people away to Turkey, refugees, not us. We want to propose to this council a number of things. One, that we must follow law. Protesters have no law. Our Constitution, Article 1, Paragraph 1, we are a sovereign, democratic, popular, socialist state. And not any part of our territory can be ceded. This is our Constitution. If they want power, they must come through the law. And that must be through the Constitution. We are ready for peace. We said none should let us do these things. We will withdraw the army. When the opposition is away, we are ready for dialogue with the opposition. We'll release the detainees. If they are not criminals, we have to investigate through our courts. Some of them are criminals and are terrorists. We'll be ready to let other people help us. But we will not let demonstrators be on the streets because they are not peaceful. We have three things. Peace is accepted by us. We'll disarm the position that is our responsibility, and we'll have security. But we are also ready for election. Three things, Mr. President: peace, disarmament, and election. Organized by our government, not by anybody else. And we would like to say that the opposition represented here is not the opposition's. This is opposition. He has only come alone. The others have not come. They are divided. So he's cheating this assembly. Mr. President, you don't have the facts. We have them. So please give us time to work with EU, to work with the Russians, to work with the Chinese, and not the Americans. Others have been the puppets of Americans, and we will not be the puppets of Americans. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your contribution. The remark from behind there for 2 minutes.
We've been keenly looking at the discussions from all the member states. We appreciate so much. However, we've not had any of the member states, neither the UN Security Council, recognizing us as the Free Syrian Official Opposition Army. And that's what we would like to say. And also on the point of the Syrian National Council, they held a new military bureau. Thus, we'd like them to review their position and stop acting like they're only players in Syria. We want the UN Security Council to issue a declaration announcing the failure of this plan so that we would be free to carry out military operations against the regime. On the allegations that the Free Syrian Army is using force to do the massacres, I would like to confirm that if you look at the massacres that have been happening around, all the equipment and the weaponry that has been used, the heavy machinery, this belongs to the Assad regime. As the Free Syrian Army, we don't have resources to fund our forces to do that. Therefore, we call the international community to support us so that we can overthrow the government and give the people of Syria a democratic country. Thank you.
One last comment from the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. But before that, the chair would like to reiterate that this is not a laughing matter. people are dying in Syria. Thank you.
What I want to say is that the United Nations respects sovereignty of each state. But one state abuse human rights, we cannot accept that one. Like what Syria is saying that they're protecting people. I don't know how can they protect people while killing women and children. Second to that, I don't know in Syria constitution if there is no freedom of expressions. You know, so when people express their own freedom, they just find themselves being killed.
Now the chair has observed that despite apologies from the member of Syria, he persists to be rowdy, and this is the last warning before the member will be thrown out. Now, order. Now the chair would like to make one comment before we adjourn, that the chair had requested that a member representative of Qatar at least say something. The chair is concerned because the chair has received some confidential documents concerning the possible involvement of Qatar in the Syrian crisis, and the chair wishes to discuss the matter with the representative of Qatar in camera before the deliberate on what needs to be done. Thank you.
The Security Council endorsed the plan and set up the UN supervision mission in Syria. As a key element was established by the Security Council Resolution number 2043 of 21st April 2012. Number 3, provisions for immediate steps by the Syrian government and the cessation of armed violence in all its forms by all parties to protect civilians and stabilize the country.